If you call someone freak today, you'll likely get two choices: a punch on your face or a lawyer at your door. That blunt reaction is modern courtesy, but a century ago, the same word paid the rent. It filled tents. It turned real people into attractions just because they looked different or lived outside what society called normal. These performers weren't myths. They were human beings, pushed into spotlights that didn't care who they were, only what they looked like. Join us for today's video as we show the 15 most unusual sideshow freaks that will shock you. Number 15, the Mexican Wonder. In the early 1900s, a performer named Gondio, or later Ego, the Mexican Wonder, emerged under the bright lights of America's sideshows. There's little known about his life off stage, but his appearance alone kept people lining up. Ego was billed as a pinhead, a term often used, sometimes cruelly, for individuals with microcephaly. He wore extravagant costumes, often exaggerated for effect, and was presented as a curiosity from Mexico, part exotic myth, part human oddity. These labels weren't chosen by him. They were the invention of showmen trying to sell tickets. What's clear is that Ego stood in the long, often troubling tradition of sideshow marketing that blurred identity for spectacle. We don't know his birth year or what happened after the lights faded, only that he was part of a chapter in circus history that rarely gave its performers a voice. Today, the posters remain. But the person behind them, his real name, real story, real life, remains mostly lost to time. And it was just one of many forgotten circus freaks. Number 14, the Bear Girl. Ursa, aka She-Bear, was a Coney Island sideshow great whose real name may have been Alice Bound, or possibly Alice Bounder. Her stage identity was often paired with a pitch book that described her as the daughter of Johanna Bounds, billed as Mama Bear. Together, they toured as Mama Bear and Bear Cub, leaning heavily into the wild, feral child persona. Ursa's act fit into a broader category of animalistic human displays popular at the time, alongside frog boys, turtle girls, penguin men, and serpent folk. These performers were marketed less for physical deformities and more for blurring the line between human and beast. Ursa's appearance was emphasized to resemble that of a bear cub, likely through makeup, costumes, and exaggerated movements. While very little personal detail survives about her real life, her act was part of a recurring circus trend where kids, especially girls, were cast as wild creatures and sold as living links between the civilized and the imagined. She vanished from records by the early 1920s. Number 13, Anna Haining Bates. Anna Haining Bates was born in Nova Scotia in 1846 with a weight of just 13 pounds, but she grew faster than anyone expected, taller than her mother by age 6, and already over 6 feet by her 10th birthday. By 17, Anna stood nearly 8 feet tall and weighed close to 400 pounds. Despite her size, she was deeply intelligent, studied music and literature, and even acted on stage. She joined P.T. Barnum's American Museum and narrowly escaped a fire there in 1865. On tour, she met Martin Van Buren Bates, another towering figure, and the two married in London, with Queen Victoria herself sending wedding gifts. Their children were born enormous but didn't survive infancy. After touring, Anna and Martin settled in Ohio and built a custom home with ceilings and doorways tall enough to match their height. Though her cause of gigantism was never diagnosed, her presence left an impression everywhere she went. Anna passed away unexpectedly in 1888, just one day before her 42nd birthday. Number 12, Ohio Bigfoot Girl. Fannie Mills moved from England to Ohio with her family as a child. She weighed 115 pounds, but her feet stretched 19 inches long and 7 inches wide, larger than most people's heads. Pillowcases became socks. 3 goats' worth of leather turned into 1 pair of shoes. She had Milroy's disease, though doctors wouldn't give it that name until years later. By the 1880s, she started traveling with her friend Mary Brown, putting her condition on display. She was billed as the Ohio Bigfoot Girl, advertised with lines like, "The woman with the biggest feet on earth," and "The old lady who lived in a shoe would have rented apartments in one of Fanny's one promotion, even claimed her dad would pay $5,000 to any man who'd marry her, though he was already dead." And she had quietly married Mary's brother William in 1886. Fanny toured for 7 years, earning decent money. But her health declined, and by 1892, she retired. She passed away at just 39. Number 11. The Irish Klondiker. Arthur J. Murphy lost all 4 limbs to frostbite, but he didn't lose his will to be seen. Born in 1867, Murphy became known as the Irish Klondiker, or the armless and legless wonder. After a brutal winter left him limbless, Murphy stepped into the world of sideshows, not as a cautionary tale, but as a spectacle of endurance. His act was less about tricks and more about existence itself, how he ate, dressed, moved, and communicated, all without arms or legs. At a time when disability often meant invisibility, Murphy stood at center stage. Posters called him a wonder, but the real marvel was his ability to carve out independence in a world that offered little. He made appearances across America during the late 80s and early 90s, representing a form of freak show fame that balanced awe with discomfort. Behind the billing, though, was just a man who refused to vanish after disaster, and made people reckon with what that looked like. Number 10. The Reckless Freaks. The Reckless Freaks didn't dust off old sideshow tricks. They smashed them into cinder blocks and walked across the shards. Launched in 2011 in the Pacific Northwest, this crew of modern freak performers like the Mighty Lurch and Nipple Nuts takes classic acts and turns them up to 11. We're talking beds of nails, face-first glass dives, bowling ball drops, thumbtack juggling, and mental floss so questionable it borders on hospital-grade stupidity. All live, unrehearsed, and unapologetic. They keep the chaos raw on purpose. If something works, great. If it doesn't, that's still the show. At one Crypticon performance, their floss stunt turned into a complete disaster, but the crowd roared anyway. That's their magic. These aren't just performers, they're punk revivalists of the sideshow spirit, where failure, danger, and absurdity all share the stage. They've got no network deals or million-dollar budgets, just nerves of steel and a Facebook page. And in a world where everything's staged, their recklessness feels strangely pure. Number 9. The Aztecs. In 1914, 2 young girls named Aurora and Natalie were exhibited at a children's playground event in Fort Wayne, Indiana, where they were billed as Aztecs. They were microcephalic, a condition that causes the head to be significantly smaller than average, which circus promoters often exploited by advertising them as pinheads. Like many children with this condition, Aurora and Natalie were assigned exotic or tribal identities, complete with elaborate costuming and fake origin stories designed to stir curiosity and sell tickets. Their roles fit within a disturbing but recurring pattern in sideshows, using fabricated backstories to make genetic conditions appear mystical. There's little record of what their lives were like off stage, but accounts suggest they may have performed into the 1920s. Whether they were sisters, friends, or simply paired together by managers remains unclear. What's known is that they were part of a system that turned physical difference into staged fantasy, and their images linger in old circus postcards to this day. Number 8. The Eighth Wonder. Sarah Biffin was born in 1784 with no arms and legs, yet lived a life that outshone most. Raised in Somerset, she learned to paint, sew, and write using her mouth. At just 13, her family placed her under the care of Emanuel Dukes, who exhibited her at fairs as the Eighth Wonder. But Sarah wasn't a prop. She was an artist. Her miniature portraits earned praise, and in 1808, her talent caught the attention of the Earl of Morton. Convinced of her brilliance, he sponsored her studies under Royal Academy painter William Craig. Her art reached royal hands, King George IV, Queen Victoria. Yet after the Earl's death, she fell into financial hardship. Her marriage offered little protection, and she returned to work under her married name, Mrs. E.M. Wright. Queen Victoria eventually awarded her a pension. She spent her final years painting quietly in Liverpool. Sarah didn't just survive sideshow life, she transcended it, brush in mouth, painting her truth. Number 7. The Maguire twins. Billy and Benny were born on the same day in 1946. As toddlers, both contracted rubella, which damaged their pituitary glands. No matter how little they ate or how much they exercised, they kept gaining weight, topping 600 pounds each by 16. By adulthood, they became the Guinness-certified world's heaviest twins, reaching 727 and 747 pounds. The two worked in L.A., performed mini-bike stunts, and eventually entered professional wrestling under the name the Maguire Twins. Their finishing moves were both absurd and iconic, belly flop splashes and rolling steamrollers. Billy died in 1979 at age 32 after a motorcycle accident while en route to a Ripley's museum. Benny never found the same rhythm without him. He partnered briefly with Andre the Giant, then retired, opening a pawn shop and later working with a Christian ministry. He died in 2001 from heart failure. The twins are buried together in North Carolina, beneath a gravestone etched with 2 Honda motorcycles and the words, "World's Largest Twins." Number 6. The Sword Swallower. Dai Andrews isn't a trick performer. He's a walking experiment in control. From swallowing swords to lying on blades, bending steel bars with his throat, and escaping straitjackets underwater, he doesn't flirt with danger, he studies it. He started young, drawn to a magician's kit at 5. What followed wasn't just a showbiz path, it was a study in bodily mastery. He's one of the few people on Earth who can swallow a curved sword, an ability that got him a Guinness World Record. But Dai didn't stop at stunts. He taught at Johns Hopkins, helping doctors understand esophageal trauma. He's trained in Kung Fu in China, meditated in the Himalayas, and mentored children in Cambodia. Every motion he makes on stage is calculated, every breath rehearsed against disaster. Dai doesn't just risk injury, he rewrites how people perceive pain, tension, and discipline. Off stage, he teaches mindfulness and internal martial arts. When Dai performs, people don't just applaud, they leave thinking differently about the body itself. Number 5. The Equestrian Queen. Katya didn't just grow up in the circus, she was born into it. Raised in Copenhagen inside one of Europe's most respected circus families, she was performing before most kids could ride a bike. Horses were her life. She mastered Liberty dressage, Roman riding, and elegant choreography by age 10. Her routines were disciplined, fluid, and breathtaking. In the 1970s, she became one of Europe's top circus artists. Then she moved to the US and joined the Big Apple Circus. There, she became the first woman to perform the legendary Courier of St. Petersburg act. She and Big Apple founder Paul Binder had 2 kids. One was even born in their RV the same night Katya performed. In retirement, she restored a derelict farm in Denmark and turned it into a living circus sanctuary for animals and aging performers. Katya Schumann never performed for attention. She did it because the ring was in her blood. For her, the circus wasn't a stage. It was home. Number 4. Karl Hermann Unen. Karl was born without arms in 1848 in East Prussia. His father refused to coddle him, and by age 2, Carl was feeding himself. At 10, he taught himself to play the violin by strapping it to a stool and using his feet. He studied at a music conservatory in his teens and graduated with honors. By 20, Unen was performing classical music across Europe. He didn't just play, he stunned crowds by replacing broken strings with his toes mid-performance. He also became a skilled marksman, able to shoot playing cards using a rifle fired with his feet. During World War I, he toured hospitals speaking to soldiers who had lost their limbs, urging them to adapt using their legs. He later acted in the Danish silent film Atlantis as an armless violinist, a role written specifically for him. In 1925, he typed and published his autobiography with his feet, calling it a pediscript. Carl died in Berlin in 1929, having proven that the limits of the human body could be redefined. Number 3. The face of Italian circus. If you grew up in Italy, you knew the look. Bright red lipstick, dark eyeliner, towering turban. Moira Orfei didn't just perform, she became the face of Italian circus. Born in 1931 into the famous Orfei family, Moira was raised under the big top. But she wasn't handed fame, she earned it. She rode elephants, trained birds, did aerial acts, and ran her own show with grit and elegance. In 1960, she launched Circo Moira Orfei and plastered her name everywhere, from posters to buses. Her image was iconic. Kids knew her face before they ever saw a tent. She starred in more than 40 Italian films, adding movie stardom to her already massive reputation. Even after suffering a stroke during a 2006 performance, she kept going under care. She passed away in 2015, but her legacy never dimmed. In Italy, Moira still means circus. She didn't just perform, she commanded the ring, and nobody ever questioned who the star really was. Number 2. Jonathan Bass. Jonathan wasn't born stiff. His body slowly froze over time, starting in 1848. What began as a strange stiffness in the joints progressed into full ossification, where bones fused together and movement became impossible. By the end, he was trapped in one unchanging position. Every joint was locked. He became known as the living mummy, not for horror, but because he lived fully conscious inside a body that could not move. Bass continued to appear at shows, often lying in a custom frame, unable to adjust or speak fluidly. His condition fascinated and unsettled viewers. He didn't perform tricks, his presence alone was the act. Bass eventually died in 1892 of what doctors at the time called stiffening of the heart, likely the same ossification process overtaking his organs. There are no records of family or interviews, just brief entries in Sideshow catalogs and a body that became a symbol of how terrifyingly still a living man could become. Number 1. The tightrope illusionist. Barbett was born Vanderclyde Broadway in Texas, but nothing about his act stayed in one box. As a child, he practiced tightrope walking on his mother's clothesline. By his teens, he was touring as a female aerialist, graceful, poised, mesmerizing. Audiences swore they were watching a woman. Then came the finale. He'd pull off his wig, strike a sharp masculine pose, and leave the crowd stunned. Barbett wasn't just playing with gender, he was confronting the rules. By the 1920s, he was headlining in Paris, catching the attention of artists like Jean Cocteau, who admired his elegance and complexity. An illness eventually ended his flying career, but he stayed in the business, choreographing acts and coaching performers. He even trained Jack Lemmon and Tony Curtis for Some Like It Hot. Barbett returned to Texas later in life and died in 1973. He never diluted his identity to fit the times. He turned it into a high-wire act, one that's still impossible to forget. If you've enjoyed this video, please like it, share it, and subscribe for more content like this. Thanks for hanging with us, and we'll see you very soon.